So where you put the emphasis on what syllable matters. How do you write a song is different than how do you write a song.
Right.
How do you build a business is different question than how do you build your business. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dia Bondi Show, a big, huge, ginormous, grand podcast for women with goals. I'm Dia Bondi, and I'm on a mission to help women ask for more and get it, research their dreams, and have a blast doing it. We are here today with my on-air bestie, Arthur Leon Adams III. Hi, Arthur.
Hey, all right, on-air besties.
Do you like that?
We could get t-shirts that say bestie.
Or just on-air bestie. I think that's super specific. Not that we're not besties in other ways, but like this is a very specific way we're besties.
Yeah, on-air bestie, on-air bae.
On our bae. Ugh. So ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, hi. Nice to see you.
Hi, good to see you. What's going on today?
So many things.
Yeah.
This is like, it was rainy yesterday and cold. And then today it was like so sunny and bright and beautiful. And I, in fact, jumped rope on the first end of the day right there in my park. I ran up to the park behind my house and jumped rope for 20 minutes. And it got ready for today because I want to talk, like something that's been on my mind is this idea of saying yes to ourselves.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm working with a client right now, a one-on-one coaching client in communications. He's a leader of a startup that's disrupting an industry that needs disrupting, and he's absolutely wonderful. I mean, I don't work a lot with a one-on-one in this way. I take on sort of ongoing clients, maybe 2 or 3 at a time, and he is just. We're halfway through our engagement, and we're working on helping him be really powerful in front of the audiences that matter to his leadership and to his business so that he and his teams can be successful. And he's super hard on himself, like super hard on himself. And he does this thing where when he's halfway through telling a story or 3 sentences into telling a story, if he doesn't like what he heard, he'll stop himself, grimace, and exhale and go back. And you can see the gears turning in his head to try to find the quote unquote perfect thing to say, the right thing to say. And on the spot, we created what in my coaching world you'd call an intervention to help him keep going. And the intervention was, hey, so let's do it again. Let's take it from the top. And as you go through this, say yes to yourself. Everything that comes out of your mouth, let it stand and say yes to it and make it work. Find a way to make it work. Agree with it. Accept it. Basically, just say yes. So we took it from the top again, and we've been working sort of with this framing, and it is creating so much progress and smoothness and command in the moment when we can accept what happens, when we can say yes to ourselves, the words that come out of our mouths, the ideas that we have, and not react to how imperfect it is and stop ourselves and constantly put ourselves in a state of do-over instead of building on what happens. There can be so much relief in it and insight and like recognition that there are multiple paths to expressing one idea. There are multiple paths to bringing to fruition a particular goal or a dream or an achievement or something on your bucket list. There are multiple paths. And I love this idea of like, when we say yes to ourselves, how do we actually end up paving a path forward for ourselves? So that's what's been on my mind. It's super simple, but really powerful. And even for me, like, where can I say yes to myself more often? Where can I say yes to my ideas? Now, I'm not saying you say yes to everything. we have to say no to something so we can make room to say yes to one thing. But just the notion of not stopping ourselves constantly because of our critical voice, because of the thing that says like, oh, I didn't say that right, or I didn't do that right, or right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole, perfect is the enemy of good thing.
100%.
I mean, sometimes I think that phrase can come off as a little flippant, but it's like perfect is the enemy of like really excellent.
Yes, I think that's really fair, that like this also doesn't mean that we're settling for garbage that comes out of it's about movement and traction and being a little bit in flow with what happens, and recognizing, one of the core things I really believe is that action reveals a lot. And when we get into action, we get into motion, or with this client, for example, if he says something one way, we can discover what works about it and do more of that instead of just erasing it, trying to pretend it didn't happen, getting into sort of a self-critical mode and stopping ourselves constantly.
Right.
So yeah, it doesn't mean that we also can't pursue excellence. It's just, even this podcast, what is it? We're recording episode 7.
Yeah.
And I think I said in an earlier episode, I'm saying to all my friends and colleagues, I think I've talked to you about this, that the only way we're going to get as good as we're going to be on episode 78 is to do 77 episodes before that.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have to actually say yes and just keep going. And in our acceptance that they will be all imperfect, we're actually going to make our way towards excellence.
Yeah, totally. Perfect imperfection.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's been on my mind this week. It's been on my mind because it's so simple and so powerful, and I'm actually seeing it kind of unfold in front of my own eyes with this client. What's so interesting to me about all of this leadership communications work I've done over the years is that stepping on stage is it's like this hyper compressed scenario where the things that play out over the course, where it's like a metaphor or like a compressed experience of what happens, in our lives over an 18-month period or a 20 or a 5-year period. This thing, we get to work on all this stuff in preparation for and in delivery of 12 minutes on stage, saying yes to ourselves, tolerating our own power in front of an audience, finding ways to identify like really clearly what idea is it that I'm trying to share with the world here? What is my role on stage in this moment that is a concentrated version of my role in the world? It's such a wonderful way to take like our whole lives and compress it into this teeny tiny moment. I think about that for auctioneering as well. Like, over the course of our careers, we're asking and getting things. We're in a generosity exchange with folks around, helping one another get somewhere. We're making decisions and making moves. We're building relationships. And those play out over, for some of us over 10 years to get to sort of some goal that we might have. But in auctioneering, I end up doing this like relationship, purpose-based negotiation, for fundraising auctioneering in like 2.5 minutes. I mean, an auctioneering one item will take anywhere from, 2 to 5 minutes, hopefully more like 2. And the amount of stuff that's playing out in that 2 to 5 minutes, you can almost just like stretch out and lay over our something that feels more like in real time over the course of 18 months in our lives, building a relationship with somebody, aligning and having affinity, and then being able to have an exchange with one another and see what delights them and see what delights you, and then having a serious moment and maybe sometimes getting confused, and then making an ask that, you don't get a response to, and then adjusting. And it's just like this whole weird, super compressed life moment or life period compressed into a moment. I've said that like 900 times, but like I love working on things that are a snapshot of so many other things. Am I talking crazy?
No, it's cool. It's like, it makes me think of like quantum theory and stuff like that, like the small things containing multitudes,
Yes, that's exactly what it feels like for me. So yeah, when we say, when you are standing in front of an audience and it's high stakes and everyone's listening and you say something that could easily say, "Ooh, that's the wrong thing," if you just instead accept it and make it work, weave it into what's next, you're going to find that you have so much more control and command than you do if you try to make it perfect and go back. And that can be expanded across so many other points in our lives.
Also, today we have a comment from a listener. She called in and left us a little message on our voicemail, which you can call at 341-333-2997 if you have a question or a comment or anything you'd like to say about the show. So here it is.
Hey, Dia, this is Tara. I just re-listened to your podcast again, and I was so excited when I realized I've been using your 5 pillars and asking for more and getting it. So I've been consulting for several months for a client of mine, and last week they asked me, what would it take for you to join us full time? So I drafted a slide last night that outlined everything I would need to make that leap. And today, when I re-looked at that slide, having listened to your podcast, I realized I literally hit all 5 pillars in asking for more in my list. And I didn't realize I was channeling my inner Dia until I put it together this morning. So thank you so much for embedding those principles in me on such a deep level.
Yeah. So, channeling your inner Dia.
That's so funny and so awesome. I don't actually know. I'm not sure that those pillars came from me, those principles, are something that were quote unquote embedded. Is that the word she used? But it's more like, yay. Thank you so much for calling in, number 1. Number 2, congratulations. And number 3, I love that you're noticing that. And these 5 pillars are not something that necessarily I created. It's what, after launching Project Ask Like an Auctioneer, I noticed that all of the asks we can make and being strategic in how we ask for what we need to, say yes to something or to resource our goals do fall into these 5 categories. It's sort of like whether I like it or not. And for those of you who hadn't heard those before, these 5 categories or 5 pillars, as she called them, which I love, are about money. They're about authority, like what decisions do we get to own? And they are about influence, and they are about balance. And this is about bringing into balance our inner selves with our external selves. And it could be in the shape of how we work, how we spend our time, what we work on. And then last is fun. Like, that one sort of comes and goes. But the underpinning of all this is I've heard from women that I want to change and I need to ask for something that is in support of having more fun in my life and in my work and fun can come in the form of engagement, that feeling like you're really connected to what you're doing, that you're awake with it. So I love it that she's noticing the very thing. She's noticing in her own negotiation, the very thing that I've been noticing over the last 18 months, talking to hundreds of women about the kinds of critical asks they make in their careers and in their businesses. So yay, I love that. Thanks so much for calling and reflecting that back to us.
Yeah, thanks so much for calling in. And like I said before, if you want to call in, you want to tell us a story about how you channeled your inner Dia, you can call us at 341-333-2997, or you can email us at hello@diabondi.com. And if you really like the podcast, you can subscribe to it, you can rate it, you can write reviews, and, share it with your friends, and it can really help this show reach other people.
That's right. We love our champions.
Okay, today we also have a question from a listener, and it's a really interesting question, and I think that you'll have a lot to say about it.
I always get so nervous. When we have a caller question.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But you answer questions from people all the time.
I know, but it's always like, maybe this is the one that I got nothing to say about.
Right,
but in 20 years, that is rare, but it's still like, oh.
All right, here it is.
Hello. I found you through one of your Creative Live courses, and I was so stoked to find your podcast. I am a learning and development professional working in corporate, and for years I've been wanting to strike out on my own and build a business around health and wellness for women. But I keep getting stuck. One idea leads to another, and pretty soon it's so big and unwieldy that I just do nothing. I want to ask for help, but I don't even know where to start.
Oh, yeah. I know what that's like.
Yeah, what's the part that's sticking out for you?
I mean, coming up with lots of strategies and ideas for things that you want to do, and then it just grows and grows and grows and grows, and then you're like, I'm just going to sit on the couch.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple things that stand out for me on this one. One is like, okay, I want to ask for help and I don't even know where to start. That's awesome. And that's totally a thing because, when I talk about helping women ask for more and get it, it's, again, not just about those ordained and recognizable negotiation moments. It's totally about using asking as a success strategy. How can I ask for help? And if I am asking for help, what am I asking for help with and who am I asking? So that's one. The other thing that's interesting is this idea of like, yes, one idea leads to another, to another, to another, and now you're crushed under the weight of all these fantastic ideas. And that can be, well, that in the moment, at moments can feel fun and fruitful. It can end up being sort of crushing. And it's interesting that this call is happening the same week that I'm sitting with this question of like, how do we say yes to ourselves and sort of make things work to keep ourselves in motion? Because I think there's a lot of power in not figuring out what the right thing is to do here, but to have her say yes to something, okay, that is tied to some clarity around what impact she really wants to have and who she's actually serving. So I guess those are the three things I'd like to touch on in this question. The first feels like, okay, when you say health and wellness or growing a business in health and wellness, what specifically do you mean? Are you talking about movement? Are you talking about mental health? Are you talking like what is the content area? So I would say pick one. And it doesn't have to be the right one. It has to be one that you can say yes to enough to start to experiment with, number one. Inside of this first bit, we also want to understand who specifically are you serving? And it's not just about like, an age group, but it might be a stage group. It could be a whole group of women who are ranging, in age, but all share that they're coming out of loss, or they're heading into a big transition in their life, or they're moving back into the workforce after having kids, or, it could be about age as much as it can be about stage in their lives. So what is it? What's the target area? And then what is the audience profile that you really want to be serving, obviously. So getting really clear on those two things and not having it be the decision that you make be the last decision you make. It's just a decision, a choice you're going to make. Just like on stage, in my earlier example with my client, it's not the last time he's going to be on stage saying a thing. He's just making a choice in this moment and saying yes to his choice and making it work. So that's the first thing. Get clear on the content area and that you want to experiment with. Reframe it as experiment, not decide and never change. And two, who do you really want to serve? And then I think there's this second piece, which is of all the ideas, similar thing, of all the ideas. Are they retreats? Are they, is it an online course? Is it products? Is like, what are the things? I would want to understand which one is the one that feels the most resonant. A few episodes ago, I talked a little bit about how do you identify a goal that might matter to you? And we're not always looking for, perfect or right. What we're looking for is resonant. And especially when you think about growing, if you're going to write a book, if you're going to, start a side hustle, if you're going to leave your corporate job and go start a new business, it's got to be resonant enough for you to be able to move through the hard parts. So if you've got 10 ideas, they are all legit, I would then look at which of those ideas sort of float to the top as the most resonant, the ones that have the highest frequency for you. And then take maybe 2 or 3 of those and start to get into movement without deciding that it's going to be the last thing you'll ever do. Just get into movement knowing that it's not going to be the last thing. And in fact, what it may end up becoming is very different than what it looks like right now. And to hold that sort of loose, I would say like firmly and loosely at the same time, right? Like you can hold it with some solidness, with big cupped hands, but you're not gripping it so tightly that it doesn't have room to breathe a little bit.
Like a little baby chick.
Like a little baby chick, exactly. So first idea, get clear with like what the content is that's most resonant for you and who you really want to serve, both in terms of, their profile could be in age, but also in stage, what they're grappling with. And then of all the ideas, the ways that you can deliver that, what is the most resonant? And then to grapple with the question of like, how do I ask for help? What do I actually ask for? I just want to say that like being alone with this stuff is really hard. It's really hard to be alone with ideas that you love, that you're not sure the world will love too. I mean, when I launched Project Ask Like an Auctioneer, I was like, what is this thing? And I felt pretty alone with it for a couple of weeks. And the moment that I said it out loud in a room and got 12 women stand up, walk across the room and come tell me what a cool idea it was and all their ideas, ways that who I could bring it to and where I could experiment with it, all of a sudden it became that baby chick. It wasn't me, It was like, wow, this is an idea outside of myself that is resonant for other women. Let's see where I can start to get it, put some legs underneath it. So for you, caller, as you think about the asks, what you could do to ask for help, there are women that are the profile of the woman that you want to serve, that are have a relationship with the content that you want to serve them with, meaning, is it movement or mental health stuff? Is it content? Is it experiences, blah, blah, blah. Gather those women in a room. One ask you could make for help is to gather those women in a room, virtual or otherwise, share with them what you're up to and find out what is the most attractive, resonant for those women that you will serve, and see if you can find yourself a pilot group of women who say yes to what you're trying to do in the world. It will help you refine and understand more deeply which one is right for them, but also right for you, because it has to serve both of you so you can stay engaged and push through those hard parts of building something new. So when we think about asking for more and getting it, maybe in this case, this is asking for more balance, meaning, and influence as well, but bringing into balance your own internal stories and ideas about what will work, what will serve, what will have the impact that you want, bringing that internal story you have into balance with how the world might see and feel about it, the stories that the world might tell about it. And the world could be 12 women in a living room doing a small focus group. So when we can not be alone with these things and connect our inner stories with the outer reality, I think that can also be really both courage-making. It can also be very refining. You can refine your ideas and find out what specifically about a specific idea is resonant and real for people, that has legs, so that your little chick that you have holding in that firmly cupped but loosely held chick in your hand can start to like walk on its own a little bit, knowing that it might not be the only chick that you ever have. So I think those are my three sort of coaching buckets as you think about how to get into motion and how to get out from underneath that crushingly large set of great ideas that can drive you to just staying on your couch. You just pick one and get into motion. I think, I don't know if I thought it earlier, if I already said it on this episode, but I do believe that action reveals a lot. Getting into action reveals to us a lot about what works, what's working, and what's not working. We just have to be willing to make one action and notice what the response is. And in this case, the action might be exactly inviting women into your reality, testing with them which ideas are most resonant so that you can get out of your head and into the world, and so that you can bring into balance the internal stories you're telling about what's the right idea or not, and what the world actually is interested in, and that might dislodge you a little bit. What's funny about this is that while you're picking something which feels like it raises the stakes, we are also lowering the stakes by not making it the last decision you'll ever make, by making it an experiment, not a decision. And one experiment and an outcome from that experiment will lead to another, will lead to another, and lead to another. And pretty soon, you're going to have something that isn't just a baby chick anymore, but maybe something that can actually fly.
The whole thing about, the idea or the decision not being like the one, this is the decision, and the idea that this is it. This is the last idea. This is the last decision. That's really eye-opening for me because, yeah, you do get really, really mired in, like, you get all these ideas and you're like, well, which one is the right idea? Which one should I do first? Which one? And it's like, well, just do one of them.
Yes. I mean, do you find you write songs?
Yes.
You're a musician.
Uh-huh.
And you write a lot of different kinds of music, and you dabble and enjoy a lot of different kinds of music. When you sit down to write a song, I mean, do you decide what it's going to be and then force it into that? Or do you experiment? Do you have an idea, a notion, and then you play with it until it emerges into and takes the shape of the thing it needs to be?
Right. Well, I could go on and on about this, but and it's a topic I'm endlessly fascinated with about songwriting process of other songwriters. But I will say that I have been in bands before that had a very specific and narrow thing that we wrote songs about and we sang about. And so that was always a box that, to write songs about. But then when I'm just writing whatever I want, it can be anything.
It's still like this caller from today. She's like, boom, health and wellness. It's specific. Like she's like, there's a box that I'm operating in. But even inside of that box, there's this sort of like idea of freedom inside of a framework, right? Or creativity that requires some constraints. So you do put it in a box and then you go like, okay, I'm going to pick an idea. I'm going to pick a riff. I don't know how this works in songwriting. And then you don't just start with nothing. You start with something,
right?
Don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to hold, I mean, like her, and like even, the thing that we're doing right now with the podcast is like, we know what it is. We're making it and also letting it, noticing what's working and what's not, and then constantly sort of letting it grow into what it needs to be so that it is excellent, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, but also saying yes to what's happening so that it can emerge. We can let it emerge and then just say yes and no to the things that aren't working or are working until it is what it needs to be.
Yeah, totally. And, you having guardrails of some kind for your project, like, you have a genre.
Yep.
Or genres that your band plays, and you have certain things that you maybe sing about or you don't sing about. And in certain instrumentation and all these things. But really, when it comes down to it, I mean, I sit down at the piano and I just start playing music and then it turns into something.
Right.
Just spontaneously. So it's a little...
Well, it's sort of like the caller today talking about, she does have that box. And she's saying, I'm going to make something in this territory. She's picked her genre, right?
Yeah.
And she's got to figure out, like, is this going to be... What does it need to be that's going to make it, my audiences come alive with it for the people that she knows like that kind of, are interested in stuff in that box, right?
Right.
And what we talked about a few episodes ago around identifying your goals, that exercise, neither of these are better or worse, but that exercise about, sort of brainstorming all of the things that are interesting to you and then looking and seeing what's most resonant, I imagine that's like what happens at the piano. You just start putting things on you start playing the piano and finding what's most resonant, what you want to follow, no?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. This is how it works for me. Some people write the lyrics first. Some people do it all at once. Some people, there's all different ways. But yeah, I sit down and I start playing some chords or some notes and I just follow that. Now, sometimes I sit down at the piano and I was like, what's a key I haven't written a song in?
Interesting. Yeah, there's gonna be an episode in our future where I want to talk about not like, I have a lot of clients who will say to me like, how do I fill in the blank? How do I prepare for a presentation? How do I rehearse? What's the right way to do it? And my answer always is not like, here's the right way to do it. My answer is, I don't know. Let's find out how you do it.
Right.
And that's what we invest in, is discovering how we do it. And that takes, going back to the caller today again, takes experimentation, a willingness to experiment.
Yeah. And honestly, now, in the last couple of years, my wife and I have been writing songs together, and that's a whole different thing. And I've learned new ways to do it. And I've done things that I never did before, like take a full set of lyrics and write music for it.
Yeah. I like my recap for this calls. I know they're supposed to be recapping right now, and we're like all of a sudden talking about this other stuff, but it's all tied because this is this question of like, how do I birth something? How do I make something in the world that is something that is doing what I want it to do, having the impact I want it to, even if it doesn't take the form that I expected. I wonder if there's a piece of this where we don't have to ask, what am I supposed to do, but ask like, yes, how do I do it? Here's what's working for me right now.
It's something that I do think about a lot, and I've talked about a lot, but it's such a like amorphous, like heady thing to even really get into, like, how do you write a song? I don't know.
No, I mean, is it though? I mean, the question, so where you put the emphasis on what syllable matters, how do you write a song is different than how do you write a song?
Right.
How do I build how do you build a business is different question than how do you build your business? So that's just, yeah.
And there can be many answers.
100%. Well, great. I love talking about this stuff with you and with you listeners, all you.
It's super thought-provoking, and I'm going to be thinking about it for the rest of the day.
Love it. And you have me on back channel, so if you ever want to talk about songwriting with somebody who knows nothing about it, but is also really curious how do you do it?
Sure.
And wants to hear about it, I'm happy to gig it up with you all day long about it.
All right, let's do it.
The Dia Bondi Show is a production of Dia Bondi Communications and is produced by Baby A. Please like, share, rate, and subscribe at Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. Do you have a question for Dia about an important ask in your life? Give us a call at 341-333-2997, and maybe you'll hear your question answered on a future episode.